The Kuriboh monster started off as kind of a joke for being one of the weakest monsters in the game. According to the anime anyway. But since Kuriboh was used so much by the main character of the first anime, there have been a lot of retrains of this card over the years, to the point where there's enough to make a top 10 on the best ones. And today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. And at number 10, we have the original Kuriboh. The original Kuriboh is probably the first hand trap in the game, as it has the effect to discard itself from your hand to prevent battle damage from any one battle. So basically, if your opponent tries to attack you directly, you can send Kuriboh from your hand to the graveyard to make you take no damage, or if one of your monsters is getting destroyed, you can use Kuriboh to take no damage. Wasn't the most useful card in the world even back when it first came out, but there are a few support cards that make it okay. Flute of Summoning Kuriboh allows you to add it straight from your deck to your hand, or special summon it. Multiply allows you to tribute it to fill your board with tokens that can't be used for a tribute summon, and Detonate allows you to destroy your Kuriboh or Kuriboh tokens to destroy cards your opponent controls. Basically, a bunch of gimmicky cards that don't really make it all that more playable, except in Duel Links. In Duel Links, Kuriboh absolutely sees play in stall decks. Since they only have 3 field zones for monsters, not as many monsters can attack. So one hand trap that prevents one attack from going through is actually not half bad. Although even in Duel Links, they don't really use Multiply or Detonate. And at number 9, we have Winged Kuriboh. Winged Kuriboh was like kind of a used card by the second main protagonist in the YuGiOh anime. I'm pretty sure he was all about elemental heroes, but he also had Winged Kuriboh as kind of like a spirit that followed him around or something. Anyways, that's not important for how this card worked in the actual game. This card is more useful than regular Kuriboh, because if it's destroyed on the field, you just don't take any battle damage for the rest of the turn. So it will protect you for a whole battle phase instead of just one attack like the original Kuriboh does. But this card needs to be on the field in order to activate this effect. So you have to use up one of your summons, or use the Flute of Summoning Kuriboh to get it out on the field. And then there's ways your opponent can get around this card, by removing it without destroying it by battle, or attacking it with a piercing monster. It's still strictly better than normal Kuriboh, and surprisingly, usually sees play alongside normal Kuriboh in Duel Links. That's mainly because Flute of Summoning Kuriboh works on both of them, and kind of gets over its drawback of needing to be summoned. And they can just summon it to your side of the field during your opponent's turn during the battle phase in order to stop the battle phase, basically. Number 8, Kuribohrn. This Kuriboh monster is part of the newer ones, so it has a much better effect. In that, at the end of the battle phase, you can discard this card from your hand to special summon one of your monsters that was destroyed during that battle phase. And it has a graveyard effect, where you can banish this card from your graveyard when your opponent's monster declares an attack, to special summon any number of Kuriboh monsters from your graveyard. And since there's enough Kuriboh monsters to make a top 10 list of them, there's a lot of targets for this card. Although that's only really useful in Kuriboh decks, and there has never been a meta Kuriboh deck. So its second effect has almost never been used outside of gimmicks. But its first effect is decent. Number 7, relinkuriboh. This card was released at the time when they were releasing the new Blackluster Soldier ritual monsters. And that's because in the anime, the main character used Kuriboh and a Gaia monster as tributes to bring up Blackluster Soldier. So, they created a Kuriboh monster that would combo with ritual monsters. So this card has the effect where if it's tributed, you can draw one card, which is a great effect, and works no matter how it's tributed, making it pretty good in Duel Links, where Enemy Controller is one of the more played staple cards, and requires you to tribute a monster in order to steal one of your opponent's monsters. And there's also lots of good decks that require tributes as well. I wouldn't say relinkuriboh sees a lot of play in meta decks in Duel Links. It's just a little bit better in Duel Links, especially for its second effect. It has a graveyard effect, where you can prevent one of your monsters from being destroyed by battle by banishing this card from your graveyard instead. So you have the potential to draw a card off of this card's tribute, and while it's in the graveyard, it protects one of your monsters. Both of which are good effects, but not good enough for it to see any play in the TCG, and only some niche play in Duel Links, where it works a lot better. And at number 6, we have Performapal Kuribohrder. This Kuriboh monster is another hand trap, which has the effect of, if your opponent declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your hand to change the attack to this card, and if you take battle damage from that battle, you gain life points equal to the battle damage you would have taken instead. So with this card, you can prevent one attack and gain a whole bunch of life points. It's almost like a draining shield, only for direct attacks only. Now, this card is a relatively new one, and this effect is not good enough at all to see any play in meta decks in today's meta, but its effect is strictly better than a lot of the previous Kuriboh cards on this list. Well, debatable. I think it's better anyway, but that's because I like to run life point gain meal decks. Number 5, Clear Kuriboh. This card has a hand effect to prevent effect damage from one source, which is not the most useful hand effect in the world, but its graveyard effect is great. If your opponent declares a direct attack while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card to draw one card. And if the card you draw is a monster, you can special summon it. And then change the attack target to the monster you special summoned. Being able to draw a card from the graveyard effect is really good. And also having the potential to special summon a monster is decent as well. But the graveyard effect puts it at a higher spot than a lot of the other ones for just how useful a straight up draw one effect is. Even if it's a hard once per turn, it's a decent effect in decks that mill a lot of cards. Number 4, Sphere Kuriboh. Sphere Kuriboh was also released around the time they were making Kuriboh monsters to have ritual support, and just like relinkuriboh, didn't see any play in the TCG, but Sphere Kuriboh was released in one of the first box sets in Duel Links, and actually still sees a ton of play. This card is like one of the staple cards in Duel Links, as it's the only hand trap in the game that fully prevents one attack. Sphere Kuriboh has the effect to send itself from your hand to the graveyard to change an attacking monster to defense position, i.e. stopping one attack. It also has the graveyard effect, where it can be treated as a tribute for a ritual summon, but it's rarely used for that. Even though it's rarely used for its ritual effect, it was used when relinquished decks were meta in Duel Links. But even without using its graveyard effect, its hand trap effect is really good in Duel Links, which I think allows it to have a higher spot on this list. Number 3, Rainbow Kuriboh. Rainbow Kuriboh actually saw competitive play, and is surprisingly not the only Kuriboh card to see competitive play in the TCG. Rainbow Kuriboh has two effects, a hand effect and a graveyard effect. Its hand effect is, if your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can equip this card from your hand to that card, to permanently stop that monster from attacking, as long as this card is equipped to it anyway. Its second effect is, if your opponent declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, basically allowing you to block that one attack. Both of these effects are good, and its first effect was very useful in locking down a monster from attacking, and then its second effect gave it just enough value for it to see actual competitive play. Number 2, Ankuriboh. This is like a brand new Kuriboh card that was just announced, but its effect is good enough that I think I can place it above Rainbow Kuriboh. This card has two effects, a hand effect and a floating effect. Its hand effect is if your opponent declares an attack, you can send this card to the graveyard to special summon one monster from either player's graveyard, and then at the end of the turn, that monster is sent back to the graveyard. This is literally a monster reborn effect to stop an attack. Its second effect is if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add a monster reborn from your deck to your hand during the end phase. So its hand effect is basically a monster reborn to stop a battle, and its floating effect literally allows you to search out Monster Reborn, one of the best spell cards currently legal in the game. Whether or not this effect is good enough to actually see play in modern decks that are all very combo based is another story though. Probably not, but its effect is good enough where I could see some people maybe experimenting with it. And at number 1, we have linkuriboh. Linkuriboh sees tons of play, and has seen tons of play ever since it was released. And it sees so much play that some people have even theorized this card might be limited or banned in the future. Basically, linkuriboh is a Link 1 monster that requires one level 1 monster as its materials, and has a downward pointing arrow, which is one of the best arrows a Link 1 monster can have. This card has two effects. Its first being the ability to tribute itself if an opponent's monster declares an attack, to make that monster's attack 0 until the end of the turn, which basically allows you to stop one attack. Since in the act of tributing itself allows your opponent to re-declare the attack, which means they can just choose to not attack with that 0 attack monster. Its second effect is a spell speed 2 effect that allows you to revive itself from the graveyard, where you can tribute a level 1 monster to special summon this card from the graveyard once per turn during either player's turn, and was a key component in the Gumblar Dragon hand loop. So its two effects are good, but what really lets this card see so much play is the fact that its materials is just one level 1 monster, and most tokens are level 1 monsters, and that it's Cyber's type, and a lot of the good Link monsters requires monsters of the same type, or having different names of monsters. So having Linkuriboh bring itself out from the graveyard is an easy way to get an extra Cyber's monster on the field, or a different name monster on the field, if you're using a whole bunch of tokens for your Link plays. So this card is incredibly easy to bring out with tokens, has a good Link arrow, has two good effects, and is Cyber's type, making this card easily the best Kuriboh monster, as well as one of the most used Link monsters in the game. And today's video was sponsored by Skillshare. Now, I've been using and paying for Skillshare myself before they even came to me with a sponsorship opportunity, so I had no problems with talking about it for this video. Skillshare has a whole bunch of in-depth tutorials on basically anything you can think of, except these are actually quality controlled, so it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for than looking through a whole bunch of garbage tutorials on YouTube. For me personally, I always use Skillshare to look up a new effect in After Effects when I'm working on a video, or if I just want to watch tutorials on general YouTube tips, because sometimes they actually give good advice. So if you'd like to give Skillshare a try, I'll have a link in the video description which will give you a 2-month free trial, which is more than enough time to see if the website is worth it for yourself.